Okay, settle in. Imagine this. Someone decides their entire life, every fleeting thought, every spontaneous action, every quiet moment should not only be captured, but immediately broadcast online through their own eyes, and that the internet gets to actively help figure out the story.
Wow.
It sounds like something out of science fiction, doesn't it?
It really does. A bit Black Mirror-ish, maybe.
Totally. But that's precisely what we're diving into today. Our source material isn't some polished documentary or, a researched article. It's truly unique, a raw, rambling, incredibly insightful, sometimes stream of consciousness transcript from a YouTube video.
Okay.
The title itself is pretty provocative. Exposed Expression, What the Hell Has Lived Become on Earth, by a creator known as Siliwi.
Got it. Silly me. An interesting starting point.
So our mission in this deep dive, based entirely on this single source, is to unpack this incredibly radical approach to creating content, to existing in the world, and to try and understand the why, the how, and maybe the potential implications of this project. We're sticking strictly to his own words, his own articulation of what he's doing and thinking. We're not bringing in outside opinions or theories. We're just exploring the world as he describes building it.
And what's genuinely fascinating here, something that makes this relevant far beyond just one individual's experiment, is how deeply it touches on themes that are central to your life right now in 2025. This idea of capturing, sharing, and processing personal experience in the digital age, it's something we all kind of grapple with, right?
Absolutely.
How do we define content? Where does genuine connection happen when so much interaction is mediated by screens? How do we capture and process the sheer volume of information and experiences we encounter, both online and off?
Yeah, it's overwhelming sometimes.
Exactly. So this deep dive isn't just about him. It's a lens into the world we're all navigating, a world where the boundaries between living, recording, and sharing are constantly blurring.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's start by really digging into the project itself. What is this person actually trying to do with his life, his thoughts, and his technology?
Yeah, the core mission.
Based on the transcript, he's engaged in a deeply personal experiment with capturing his life, specifically emphasizing the use of glasses for recording. He talks about wanting to go live from my glasses.
Ah, the glasses camera.
Right, noting that this allows him to move freely, swipe through and do whatever and still have it being captured. This gives him the flexibility to leave, set my phone down, switch to glasses if I want, offering a completely different perspective than, say, a handheld camera.
Yeah, and he explains the rationale behind that glasses perspective, doesn't he? He wants to capture what he calls a more dynamic, like actual in-life person type video. It's about getting that first-person view, the perspective of someone actively living, moving, and interacting with the world, rather than just a static shot from a phone or a deliberately framed video.
Less performative, maybe.
Exactly. He sees this as a way to reduce the performative aspect that often comes with recording oneself, or at least that seems to be the goal.
Absolutely. And he explicitly states his core objective with this first-person capture. He wants to capture in real moments.
Real.
Yeah, in real moments, emphasizing that these should not be overly created or curated in any way.
Okay. Raw.
He does acknowledge that some structure is necessary for the technicalities of live streaming, but the intent is crucial to capture the raw, unvarnished experience of his life. He wants to just talk like as I live my life, as I do the things, I do the work I do.
So it's a quest for capturing spontaneity, right?
Yeah.
The authentic flow of consciousness and action pretty much as it happens.
Yeah.
And he feels this particular method, this constant capture of spontaneous life, isn't some niche behavior confined just to him. He seems to believe this approach is simply part of living in this world in 2025.
That's a big claim.
It is. He articulates a view that we all inherently do it and think on top of that. Meaning we live our lives, perform actions, and simultaneously we are thinking about those actions, processing them internally. This project is, in his mind, simply making that internal process external and visible.
Huh. Okay. And he links this direct capture of internal process to self-trust, saying something like, the more you can just kind of trust yourself to live your life in a way that allows you to not really be afraid of if someone's watching it or not.
So if you trust your own process, you shouldn't fear it being seen.
That seems to be the idea. He deeply connects this act of living and thinking and now capturing to finding meaning in the most mundane daily activities.
That's a powerful connection. He's not just recording, he's finding meaning in the act of living and seeing the recording as an extension of that meaning making.
Exactly. The logic follows, for him at least, if you find meaning in something you do, then capturing that thing, whether it's a thought, an observation, or a simple task, and then sharing the meaning you derive from it makes complete sense.
So it becomes about spreading his personal meaning outward.
Pretty much. And this leaves him to define the project in very bold terms, testing out what it actually would be like to do this thing where I basically just upload my entire life to the internet.
He's not shying away from the magnitude of the concept.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. He doesn't soften the description at all. He calls the idea of basically just live streaming the entirety of life through a first-person view.
The entirety. Wow.
He sees this continuous stream as his personal projection of what it is I just experienced in life, what it is I'm experiencing in life.
His personal projection, what do you think he means by that exactly? Is it filtered?
Well, based on his earlier comments about wanting in-real moments, it seems to mean his unique internal processing and perspective layered on top of the raw visual capture. Not necessarily filtered in a fake way, but just his take.
Okay.
He says the deeper he can get into the moment of actually experiencing something, like talking out loud what I'm doing, what I'm going through what I'm thinking about, what I'm doing, the more he can make that inner process, that stream of consciousness and experience on top of this narrative that's just me talking.
So it's like commentary and perspective happening simultaneously with the living itself.
Yeah, like director's commentary on his own life, but live.
It's a fascinating model. He's not just recording events, he's recording the experience of events, complete with his real-time thoughts and internal monologue. He's building a narrative, not through editing or scripting, but through the raw, moment-by-moment expression of his consciousness as it encounters reality.
And he's fully aware of the weight of this decision.
Okay.
He recognizes the gravity, calling it a scary prospect.
I bet.
The sheer scale of having your entire life seen through your own eyes, potentially permanently online, is, as he says, intimidating. It's a decision he doesn't take lightly, even as he pursues it.
He then provides a really interesting origin story for how he landed on this radical idea. It didn't start with a desire to be a live streamer, apparently.
Where did it start?
It began with a more traditional creative ambition. He initially wanted to be a writer. Specifically, he had a very unique, maybe slightly unusual goal for a writer. He wanted to rewrite the movie of Interstellar my own way.
Rewrite Interstellar. Yeah. Seriously, that's ambitious.
Right. Especially for someone who later describes himself as a college dropout with no formal background in physics or these complex topics. It speaks to a deep-seated desire to grapple with big ideas and narratives, though.
Definitely. So how did rewriting Interstellar lead to live streaming his life?
Well, this ambition to tell a story, this internal drive to wrestle with a narrative, led him to explore different mediums. He wasn't initially fixated on video or live streaming, but as he thought about the most efficient way for him to tell that story, not necessarily a literal adaptation, but maybe the story that emerged from grappling with those ideas, he landed on live streaming. He deemed it the most efficient way to tell that story. And even more crucially, he realized it was the most efficient way to figure out what that story is in the first place.
So the live stream isn't just a way to tell a preconceived story. It becomes the process of discovering the story.
Precisely. That's how it seems. He's not planning a narrative arc and then filming it. He's filming and living, capturing his spontaneous thoughts and experiences. And through that process, he believes the story will emerge.
The medium is the message and the method.
Kind of, yeah. The live stream, this continuous capture of his conscious experience, is the narrative being written in real time. He's living to discover the story within himself and the world, and using the live stream as the mechanism for that discovery and expression.
Okay, that helps clarify the why.
Yeah.
But, as you hinted earlier, thankfully, it's not an absolute free-for-all. He clearly states that there are important boundaries he intends to maintain, even with this project of capturing everything.
Yes. This is a critical counterpoint to the idea of uploading the entire life. He specifies that it's explicitly not going to be live 24/7.
Okay.
He emphasizes that I have so many personal moments that are going to stay in place within my life.
And he's quite specific about what those boundaries protect.
He is. The key boundary he repeatedly mentions is protecting connections with people. This seems paramount.
Makes sense.
He's talking about those he loves and connects with on an intimate level, but also friends and even close acquaintances. He defines these as people with whom he feels raw connections that aren't just through a screen through watching a video of me talking.
This highlights a core tension in his project, and honestly, a tension many of us face, I think. He wants to capture authentic reality, yet recognizes that the act of capture can fundamentally change the authenticity, especially when other people are involved.
Exactly. This tension between the drive to capture everything for his project, for self-discovery, for story building, for sharing personal meaning, and the absolute need to protect genuine non-digital connections with others is a central theme.
And it's a tension that you, listening right now, probably navigate every single day.
For sure. Whether you're a streamer, a heavy social media user, or just someone trying to maintain relationships in an increasingly digital world, how much of your life do you share? Where do you draw the line between what's public content and what are truly private moments or relationships? This speaker's explicit boundary setting, even while undertaking such an extreme project, offers a really interesting point of comparison to the often blurry lines of modern social media or streaming platforms, where everything can potentially become fodder for likes and views. He's consciously deciding what won't become content.
Despite these boundaries, though, he also extends a clear invitation to anyone who might stumble upon this stream of his life. He opens the door wide for interaction.
He does. He says whoever wants to watch can participate, join in, comment, put in their 2 cents.
Wow.
They can laugh at me or yell at me or say whatever they want to say about me. He's intentionally making himself vulnerable to external input, inviting viewers to engage with his live, unfolding reality.
But importantly, he quickly adds a crucial caveat to that.
Yes, he makes it clear that this invitation is entirely optional for the viewer. It's not going to be a requirement for anyone to participate in this thing that I'm trying to build.
Okay, so you don't have to engage.
Right. This underscores that while he's inviting external input, this is ultimately his project, his personal projection, and experiment. The viewers are welcome to engage, but their engagement isn't necessary for the project itself to continue, at least from his perspective. It's an open channel, but not a mandatory one.
Fascinating. It's this mix of radical openness and carefully guarded boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Section 2 delves into the mechanics of how he's doing this and the underlying philosophy of seeing the internet itself as a kind of external memory and learning machine.
Right, the how and the thinking behind it.
So how is he actually capturing and, maybe more importantly, processing this torrent of information from his life?
Well, beyond the video from the glasses or phone, he mentions a crucial step that really speaks to the depth of his intention. He says he is transcribing every single word that I say.
Every word.
Every single word. This isn't just ambient audio. He's capturing the actual language he's using, his stream of consciousness verbalized, and turning it into text.
Wow, that's dedication. Where does it all go?
And all of this, both the raw capture and the transcription, is going into a Google Doc.
A Google Doc.
Yeah.
That feels almost quaint for such a futuristic sounding project. But I guess it highlights the intention making the raw material searchable and accessible.
Exactly. The medium isn't the point. The accessibility and searchability are. And he's keenly aware of the implications of putting this kind of data online, even in a document.
Yeah.
He states the well-known truth: what goes around on the internet stays around on the internet, acknowledging that his captured, transcribed thoughts are entering a permanent, immutable digital record. This isn't fleeting content. He sees it as persistent data.
This sounds like much more than just recording for the sake of it. It feels like an active process of knowledge building.
It absolutely is. This isn't passive recording. The act of capturing and transcribing is part of an active cognitive process for him. He's doing it because he sees the potential for revealing interconnections between things that I'm trying to learn, things that I'm trying to experience within my life.
Finding patterns in his own thoughts.
Exactly. He's explicitly looking for patterns and links within his own stream of consciousness, connecting seemingly disparate thoughts and experiences to possible future inspirations of ideas.
Say the Google Doc with the transcription becomes his externalized brain dump, like a pool of raw thoughts to be mined later.
Precisely. And he highlights a stated need to revisit this thing at another point in the future. He gains significant benefit, he says, from going back, rewatching, rereading the things that I'm transcribing. He sees this captured data, the video, the audio, and the searchable text as the raw material for incorporating in some sort of bigger picture of idea that I've been trying to write.
So connecting it back to his writing goal.
Right. It's about taking the spontaneous, uncurated thoughts captured live and using them as building blocks to construct larger, more structured ideas for his creative expression and writing projects.
He also mentions using technology to help manage and navigate this growing archive of himself.
Yes. He talks about leveraging tools that can help make this data more navigable and useful. He mentions the potential use of AI overviews, which suggests summarizing capabilities, AI-generated spacing marks or whatever, perhaps indicating automated segmentation or chaptering.
Okay.
And the standard YouTube feature of time-stamping in your YouTube videos to set chapters manually or automatically.
This really highlights a fascinating use of technology.
Uh-huh.
It's not just for the initial broadcast or storage, but as a personal knowledge management and creation system.
Exactly. By time-stamping his thoughts and actions, by potentially using AI to process the raw video and transcripts, he can literally go back and rewatch and see the connections and timestamps within his own sprawling stream of consciousness.
Makes searching easier, I guess.
Totally. This structured revisitation allows him to identify themes, track the development of ideas, and explicitly build upon them, incorporating them into my story building and his broader writing and expressional ideas of thought. It's a form of augmented self-reflection.
Augmented self-reflection. I like that. And he even takes this further, suggesting the AI could do more than just organize.
He does. He ponders the possibility of listening back to his own captured thoughts through some sort of augmented use of AI, and what its opinion on what I was trying to say was.
Whoa. Get AI opinion on his own thoughts.
Yeah. The idea here is that an AI could analyze his words, not just for summary or structure, but potentially to interpret, draw connections he missed, or even offer a different perspective on his own thoughts.
Like a digital therapist or a brainstorming partner.
Maybe something like that. He wants to see if AI can help him glean new information and build off the ideas in ways that pure human memory or review might not facilitate.
So his own thinking becomes data for an AI to process, generating new insights about his own thoughts. That's kind of recursive.
It is. He's essentially creating a feedback loop between his consciousness, the captured data, and an artificial intelligence designed to analyze that data. It's turning introspection into an external, technologically mediated process.
He uses a great analogy to explain how this internal processing, now externalized, feels.
Yes, the ride-a-bike comparison.
Right.
He says when you learn to ride, you make all the necessary connections for balance and movement all at once. It's complex initially, but eventually it becomes instinctive, automatic. It's an internal process that you no longer consciously break down.
Okay, but how does this system differ from just riding a bike? Where's the analogy breakdown?
The key difference in his analogy is that with his system, the thought, the internal connection, the insight he vocalizes while riding the metaphorical bike is saved on the internet somewhere.
The permanence.
Exactly. Unlike the purely internal, ephemeral process of mastering a physical skill, his thought process, captured and transcribed, is now a persistent artifact. This means the captured thoughts can be revisited by him for reflection and building ideas,
Right.
or potentially figured out and understood by others if they're interested enough to watch and analyze his stream. It's making the internal process externally available for review and analysis.
So what does all of this, the live capture, the transcription, the AI processing mean for his stated goals of understanding reality and needing help working out his thoughts?
Well, he seems to believe this entire system is the most optimal way I have found for him to achieve his goals, which are fundamentally about learning and understanding himself and reality.
Even though he feels he doesn't know much.
Right. He freely admits that he feels he knows so little about this world, describing himself as a college dropout with no formal deep background in fields like physics, architecture, painting, writing, science, religion, or philosophy, many of which seem relevant to the big questions he's grappling with, like, rewriting Interstellar.
That creates a significant tension, doesn't it? He has these massive intellectual ambitions, but feels he lacks the formal foundation and knowledge to fully process them alone.
It does. And this lack of formal knowledge, combined with the complexity of the ideas he's exploring, makes him feel he needs people to help me work out these thoughts. He recognizes the value of external perspectives and knowledge. But the fascinating part is that the mechanism for this help isn't traditional mentorship or classroom learning, or even direct one-on-one conversations in a private setting.
It's the stream itself.
It's through this publicly available, time-stamped, searchable, potentially AI-processed data stream of his life. He's putting his raw, unedited thoughts out there, hoping that anyone with the knowledge to answer the questions he implicitly poses through his expressed thoughts can potentially find his stream, watch, analyze, and understand where he's coming from.
And then maybe chime in.
And perhaps offer insights or help. Yeah.
He's essentially crowdsourcing his own education and intellectual development through radical transparency.
In a way, yes. It's a bet. He's betting that by making his internal process public, he can tap into a collective intelligence, inviting others to engage with his thinking at a really fundamental level.
Okay, this is all very conceptual. Let's bring this back down to earth for a moment. Section 3 grounds this abstract concept in his actual daily life, as described in the transcript, including his job.
Yes, good idea. He pulls back from the philosophy and technology to talk about his concrete reality. He describes running a popcorn stand.
Just a popcorn stand.
Yep. And he provides such vivid, almost sensory details about this simple task.
Right.
He runs it every weekend, a lot of times on the weekends, just out on the street making popcorn. He paints a clear picture using a giant kettle and a giant metal spoon, throwing oil and kernels into a pot and stirring it to make something kind of yummy.
Huh.
He describes the interaction. People from the side of the road come and buy it off of my table in the middle of the mountains. You can almost smell the popcorn and see the steam rising from the kettle.
Why include this seemingly mundane detail right after discussing live streaming his entire life and processing thoughts with AI? It feels like a deliberate contrast.
Oh, it absolutely serves as a powerful counterpoint to the abstract digital project. This simple, tangible, real-world task, performed outdoors with physical tools and direct human interaction, is what makes me enough money to get by.
Okay. The practical side.
He explicitly states it covers his basic needs,
Mm-hmm.
paying his electric bill, my mortgage, and ensuring he has food, water, shelter, internet, and electricity.
So the physical, non-digital work provides the foundation that allows him to pursue the intensely digital, non-traditional project.
Exactly. And he expresses genuine amazement at the simplicity of this reality, saying, that's just crazy to me, like that I can just do that and I can have all of my needs met.
He finds it remarkable.
Yeah, that this basic real-world activity, selling popcorn from a table on his little acre-and-a-half plot of land, sustains him, pays for his utilities and shelter, and thus enables him to spend his time on this ambitious, abstract digital project of self-capture and discovery.
It grounds his futuristic ideas in a very fundamental, almost timeless economic reality.
Well put, yeah.
He connects this grounded reality, this idea of making something tangible like popcorn, to a broader philosophy about making life better too.
He does. He paraphrases his advice on the most efficient way to improve one's life. It's disarmingly simple. It's to think about it for a second before you do it.
It doesn't reflect.
Basically, he believes that consciously reflecting on life, on your actions, your thoughts, your experiences, before you just plow ahead, allows you to just do it better. He links this reflective pause to the idea that the more you can string these moments of reflection together, these conscious pauses to process and understand, the more you can basically build any life you want to live.
Intentionality. Self-awareness.
Right. It requires being satisfied with yourself enough and where you are in life to just stop for a moment and take life and just live and enjoy it.
This seems almost contradictory, though, to the idea of constantly capturing and broadcasting life. The reflective pause seems to require stepping out of the flow, not capturing every second of the flow.
It does introduce a fascinating layer of complexity, doesn't it? It highlights the tension between the constant output and capture of the live stream, the external recording, versus the need for internal reflection and presence in the moment, the internal processing.
So how does he square that circle?
Well, he seems to suggest that capturing these meaningful moments in time isn't just random recording. It's linked in his mind to the doing of an artistic action.
In artistic action. Like making popcorn.
Whether that action is as simple as making popcorn, as engaging as playing a game, as complex as having a deep conversation, or as fundamental as simply thinking out loud, he posits that you are always doing something in life that is meaningful to you.
Okay.
And that act of doing something meaningful combined with reflection is what's worth capturing, or at least noting. The capture is perhaps a way to facilitate the later reflection on the meaningful actions.
Huh. Maybe.
Yeah.
He also steps back to comment on the wider live streaming landscape, right?
Mm-hmm.
Seeing his project in the context of what many others are already doing online.
He does. He observes the sheer scale and variety of online activity. He notes that so many people live stream doing so many different things, expressing a sense of wonder that it's so weird what you can do just on the internet.
What examples does he give?
He lists stuff like just people talking, just people like expressing their thing, people focused on gaming, and people engaged in debates, sometimes seemingly just to argue for arguing's sake, where the act of arguing is the content itself.
And he explicitly includes podcasts in this phenomenon.
He does. He describes podcasts as essentially people basically just live streaming themselves talking.
Right.
He sees them as live streaming thoughts between each other, or even just with oneself, like a solo podcast. His provocative assertion, drawing from these observations, is that this kind of raw conversational expression, the spewing of oneself and one's thoughts, is just happening now in life at all times.
It's become a fundamental mode of existence in the digital age, in his view.
That seems to be his take, yeah.
And he gives a blunt, almost shocking label to the people engaged in this constant live self-expression.
Yeah. He uses the term psychopaths for live streamers.
Psychopaths, why?
Well, he explains his reasoning based on what he observes. They just be them for a living, they play video games, and they make money doing it.
Okay.
This leads him to pose a pointed question that cuts to the core of his broader inquiry about the meaning and value of life in this digital age. Is that all our life is we just play the game live and get paid? Is that all this world is?
Wow, that's heavy.
He even suggests that with the current state of technology and the online economy, it's kind of already proven to be true.
That's a stark and challenging perspective. It questions the very definition of work and value when simply being oneself and playing games can be a livelihood, contrasted with his own tangible work making popcorn.
It is. He's wrestling with the implications of this new digital economy of attention and self-expression. And he links this to the online debate culture he observes, noting the constant polarization of any given two of these, ideas. The internet seems to amplify differences in arguments, reducing complex issues to opposing sides.
Yet despite calling some content nonsense and observing polarization, he still holds on to a belief in the underlying intention behind people's online expression. Is that right?
He does seem to. Despite the nonsense that people sometimes spew utter nonsense onto the internet, he maintains a hopeful view that people express themselves for a reason. He posits that most people nowadays have some sort of common sense.
Interesting.
This circles back to his own stated need for people to help him work out his thoughts because he feels he knows so little. He's navigating this often chaotic, polarized digital landscape filled with both nonsense and potential common sense in search of reasoned input and genuine understanding to build his own knowledge. He's looking for the signal in the noise, maybe.
Okay, let's shift now to Section 4, which moves into the bigger picture, the deeper ideas and significant challenges inherent in living and sharing one's life online in this way, touching on connection, ethics, and even collective intelligence.
Right, the broader implications.
One of the first things he talks about in this context is vulnerability.
Yes, he speaks very openly about how this project feels emotionally. He quotes himself, saying, I feel vulnerable expressing these ideas, expressing these thoughts and ideas that I have about the world, about myself, about just the reality around me.
It's not just a technical exercise then.
Not at all. It's a deeply personal act of exposure. He describes his process. He's taking it in a certain way, and it is unique to me, and immediately expressing it back out. He's externalizing his raw, unique processing of reality in real time.
This act of immediate capture and externalization of his unique internal experience, how does he see that connecting to his goal of building understanding?
He believes this is precisely how he is creating a reality in which I can go back and build upon ideas.
Creating a reality?
By capturing his live processing, his thoughts, his unique way of taking in the world, he's creating a record of his own developing consciousness. He sees himself literally stacking them together in a way that I want, stacking these recorded thoughts and experiences, and just do that until a specific reality is achieved.
That's just a very active, almost architectural approach to building his own understanding of the world, piece by piece, using his captured life as the raw material.
Yeah, like a reality constructed from his own documented perception and reflection.
But this raises huge challenges, surely, especially when his reality involves other people. He explicitly identifies the ethical dimension of incorporating other people into this live, captured stream of his life.
This is a major point of friction and concern for him. He details feeling guilt in incorporating them into the live stream, specifically when engaging with others in conversation or what he refers to as a podcast that was with myself.
Guilt.
He feels this guilt acutely when interacting with someone while his stream is live, knowing their words and presence are being captured as part of his project.
And he articulates the source of this guilt very clearly, doesn't he?
He feels he hasn't established the proper terms of connection based on pre-established terms of connection within reality.
What does that mean exactly?
What he means is that in typical social interactions, there's an implicit understanding of privacy and context. By live streaming the interaction without explicit agreement, he feels he has crossed the bounds of ethical agreement to being live together with another individual.
Consent, basically.
Exactly. He hasn't gotten their informed consent, or at least not in a way that meets his own ethical standards for this type of radical capture.
This is a critical question, and not just for him. It's something you and everyone navigating online spaces has to consider. How do we gain consent? How do we manage privacy? And how do we respect the boundaries of others when our lives and interactions are increasingly blended in shared digital environments, where recording and broadcasting are often just a click away?
Totally. His personal struggle highlights this universal challenge in the digital age. It's precisely that. His project forces the issue, but the ethical tension is present in many online interactions, from tagging friends in photos to quoting private messages publicly. He's wrestling with the fundamental question of ownership and control over one's presence and words in a shared digital space that's being captured by someone else.
Does he suggest a potential solution to this ethical challenge with others?
Yes, he believes it requires direct communication and agreement. He talks about needing to hash out and talk about where that connection could go.
So have the conversation up front.
Seems like it. This would involve agreeing upon specific times or terms for being live together, establishing a clear, explicit agreement rather than just spontaneously incorporating someone into his continuous stream. It's about moving from implicit social norms to explicit digital consent.
Despite these ethical hurdles and the challenge of incorporating others, he also sees significant potential for rich interaction and community through this live format.
He does. He observes that people already have big communities built around live streaming and online platforms. He notes how people hop between different streams or platforms, joining Discords or other group chats to go live together, often just for fun.
Like a digital hangout.
Right. It's a social activity, a new way of congregating. He notes that viewers aren't just watching for the main streamer. They enjoy watching based on who people talk with, especially when those individuals are knowledgeable about any given thing.
So the interaction itself is the draw.
Yeah, the value comes from the diverse perspectives and the interaction itself. He gives the almost trivial example of debating if cheeseburgers are better than hamburgers, to show that the topic can be simple. The engagement and knowledge sharing is the key.
This leads him to share a much larger, highly ambitious, almost utopian vision later in the transcript. He extrapolates from his personal project to the idea of a collective intelligence system built on everyone's captured thoughts.
Yes, this is where his thinking expands dramatically. He describes an idea of capturing everyone's knowledge and their attributions to the live internet.
Everyone's.
Everyone's. He envisions this massive collective data set being processed by AI in a way that creates a systematic voting system within ideas and expressions of thought between two given things in our actual real world.
A systematic voting system processed by AI based on everyone's thoughts?
Yeah.
That's a huge leap. Can you give his example?
His example is quite practical, actually, despite the grand concept. He uses the decision-making process around public works. I want this road built. I don't want this road built.
Okay.
He's imagining a future where collective opinion, captured and processed, lived through this vast interconnected digital network and analyzed by AI, could somehow directly influence real-world decisions, acting as a form of continuous distributed governance or collective preference signaling.
He even questions the feasibility of this himself, doesn't he? Like, can we actually do that?
He does. He asks if we all be able to do that live at any given rate that we choose, acknowledging the logistical and perhaps philosophical challenges of such a constant collective input system.
This ties back to his earlier prediction about everyone eventually capturing themselves online.
It connects directly. This grand vision relies on his prediction that all of us are going to get to a point where we're doing that at some point, at some capacity, we're capturing ourselves live on the internet.
An inevitability, in his view.
It seems so. He sees everyone in some way creating something, contributing some way to some system, and generating value, something that has energy and worth. He believes this is an inevitable trajectory because, as he puts it, that data, that storage is not stopping anytime soon. It is only getting more and more ginormous.
The data explosion.
Exactly. This immense and ever-growing amount of information, the captured thoughts, experiences, and interactions of potentially billions of people is being crunched by AI 247, and in his view, meaningful information is being stored away and processed within this accelerating expansion of a collective digital consciousness. His personal project is just one node in this predicted vast network.
So, to recap this deep dive, Drawing purely from the fascinating rambling transcript of Silly, we've journeyed from one person's intensely personal, vulnerable experiment of live streaming his entire life through a first-person view,
Seeing it as a mechanism for self-discovery and story building.
to grappling with the immediate crucial ethical challenges of including others in that stream and needing explicit agreement,
Right, the consent issue.
to his reflections on the changing nature of work and value in the digital age, contrasted with the tangible reality of selling popcorn.
The popcorn stand versus playing games for a living.
And finally, to his grander, almost utopian vision of a collective digital consciousness formed from everyone's captured thoughts, potentially processed by AI into a kind of digital voting system for reality itself.
And what's truly striking looking back at the source material is how much tension he holds within his own articulated ideas.
Yeah.
There's the strong, almost relentless drive to capture and share everything for personal learning and building ideas versus the clear, non-negotiable need for private boundaries and protecting genuine, non-digital connections with people.
That push and pull.
Yeah, then there's the immense vulnerability he feels in expressing his unique, raw thoughts live versus the deep desire for connection, collaboration, and needing others with their common sense and knowledge to help him process those very same thoughts.
Opening up and needing help to make sense of it.
Exactly. And finally, there's his very personal quest for understanding reality versus the potential for this collected digital data to form a collective intelligence, or even, as he speculates, an AI-mediated digital voting system that shapes the real world we all inhabit.
And remember, all of this came from just one person's thoughts, articulated live, likely as he was experiencing them, maybe even while riding that metaphorical bike he talked about.
Yeah.
It's a raw, unfiltered snapshot of one mind trying to navigate life, make sense of reality, and explore the potential of technology and constant digital capture in 2025.
It leaves us with a thought drawn directly from the themes he explored. If our captured thoughts and experiences, our live streams, our posts, our comments, our digital footprint, shared increasingly openly and processed by ever more powerful AI, are becoming the fundamental building blocks of a shared digital reality, a collective consciousness he predicts we're all contributing to.
Then what?
Then what responsibility do you have for what you contribute to that stream? And ultimately, what kind of reality are we collectively building together with every captured, shared, and processed moment?